This is my shop before installing American green lights, and this is my shop after. So why American green lights? In my honest opinion, based on every other light that I've ever seen, every other shop I've ever been in, nothing compares to the light that these lights give off. It's almost strange to even describe to somebody. And it is always one of the key talking points for anybody that ever comes over to my shop. And it was always one of the key talking points for any shop that I ever went to that had American green lights. So what is so great about them? The thing that's so great about American green lights and why I chose to use them in not only this shop, but the previous shop, is that it has a high CRI. And CRI stands for Color Rendering Index. The CRI on these lights is a 95. So I'm not gonna pretend to start talking about the science and explain all of that. If you wanna find out a bunch of really good information, you can actually go to americangreenlights.com and read all about it. There's all kinds of great articles discussing the difference between lumens, between foot candles, what the CRI actually means. But for me, why it's important is because the color rendering of these lights is really, really great for somebody that films on a daily basis. Now, where it has become the biggest advantage for me is not only the filming, but also the woodworking, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But for me, having the ability to come in my shop, I set up my camera one time, and I never have to mess with the settings again. I never have to color correct anything. I just shoot my video, and it's done. Why? Because the color in this shop is always so consistent every time I come out here. As soon as I dial in the settings on my camera, I never have to worry about it again. Now, when I talk about, the vividness of these lights, there's a couple of things that you can always your eye will always go to, right? So I don't think there's any denying the color of the Festool green, right? I think anybody that has seen a Festool box knows the green. Well, that is the color coming through the camera. This is not color corrected. This is nothing. This is an accurate depiction of this green. The red on this sustainer is an accurate depiction on the screen without any color correction. The blues that you see behind me, it just takes the colors and it makes them bright and vivid, unlike any other lights that I've ever experienced in my shop. If we go back and look at the shop prior to me putting in the lights, you can see the amberness and just the poor lighting and the poor coverage, and what a massive difference it was from that to installing the lights and what you see here. Now, I mentioned why this is beneficial for woodworking. Not only do I have perfect even coverage everywhere through my shop, I'm able to see everything that I'm doing, and it gives me an accurate representation of what I'm working on. And where that becomes very important is a couple of different aspects to woodworking. Let's say that I'm trying to take 7 different boards and I'm trying to make sure that the colors match as best as possible for whatever project. I'm able to see that more clearly in that clear light because it's giving me an accurate representation of what it is that I'm actually looking at. Where it also comes into play is it's really gonna help you see inconsistencies or mistakes that you make when maybe finishing or something like that. Now, to go further with the finishing, it could be very useful to, let's say you're trying to match a certain color. Having that clear picture is really gonna help with that process. So the way that this works, you take a sketch of your shop, right? It can be a sketch on a napkin. It can be a quick rough sketch on a piece of paper. You can go in PowerPoint and just plot boxes, or you can go one step further and provide a SketchUp model even to Jim over at American Greenlights. What he does is he then takes that model and imports it into his software, which will give a rendering of your shop. From there, it will generate the best light package, and when it generates that best light package, it's also going to show you just how much lighting coverage and exactly where that lighting coverage is going to be, to the point of how many foot candles are going to be on each one of your surfaces. So these right here are just some pictures of my current shop, and as you can see, all of my work surfaces are very illuminated, which is extremely important to me because those are the places that I'm working the most. It's also beneficial for when I'm trying to do tight shots. When I'm trying to explain something, I know that I have great light coverage on that specific area. Now, once you get this whole package back, it'll tell you exactly how many lights you need, and at that point, should you choose to order some of the lights, they will be sent to you. And then here's the great part, is that that documentation is what makes the install so easy, because you don't have to guess where you're supposed to put things, because on this document right here, it actually shows you by foot where each one of these lights is supposed to go. Now, a little bit on the lighting package that I'm using in my shop. It is 16 total lights. They are 4-foot, 48 watt LEDs. And when I say 48 watt, it means that there's 2 LED strips in them. In my previous shop, I want to say I had 22 or 24 lights, but they were all 24 watt. So since I'm using the 48 watt in this shop, we just needed a few less lights. I am not actually going to be doing a very detailed install video, as I already have one of those from the previous shop series, and I'll leave a link to that video down in the video description. However, since I have installed these in 2 different shops now, I did want to share a few tips and tricks that will make the install of your lights a lot easier. Now, when you get these lights, in each box, there's going to be 2 pieces. You're going to have the LED driver, which is going to be the first piece that gets hung on the wall, and then you have the actual LEDs themselves. What I like to do is open up all of the packages and then separate my drivers from the lights, and then that way I can just start installing one thing at a time. What I have found is doing one task all the way through and then going back and starting the next task is the best thing in a process like this. And the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to install these LED drivers. And one thing that I cannot recommend enough is having a laser level for this process. Why a laser level is so beneficial in this process is because I can measure on both ends of the room however far out that light row needs to be, and then I can use my laser level to line all of that up. So then all I'm doing is following a laser to ensure that my lights stay in a straight line. The only thing you have to do from there is figure out the spacing between the lights, which if you follow the schematic that is sent to you, it's very easy because it's given to you. Now, once all of the drivers are installed, the next thing to do is start focusing on the wiring. And the way that I did the wiring on mine, and I am so glad that I did it this way because it made everything very easy, is I actually took the Romex and unraveled it and then fed it through every single light, which this did take a little bit of time because obviously it's bendable, but it starts to get caught on things. So you just take your time and you run it through every single one of the lights all the way around the room. And then the other recommendation to this is that you leave enough slack in each one to be able to give you a little bit of wiggle room. You don't want to have that cable super tight all the way around, because when you go to cut those wires and you pull everything together and you wire everything, it can get a little bit tight. So you want to leave a little bit of play basically to allow yourself enough cable to actually make the connections. Now for this, I started all the way at what I knew my last light was going to be and worked my way back to the very first light. At this point, no power of any sort is hooked up to this line. Now the wiring on these is very, very simple and straightforward. Each one of the lights is connected to each other. And the way that this is accomplished is when I pull down the white Romex and I cut it in half, I now have a line coming from the previous light. I now have a line that's going to go to the next light, and both of those lines are going to get connected to the lines for the light. So every light, with the exception of the first and the last, is going to have 3 lines into it. One for the light before, one for the light after, and the actual light that you're working on. Now, once all the electrical is done, then you can actually go through and install the light itself. Now, the light is very easy to install because it just has one little plug connection that fits to the LED driver, and then there's simply 2 screws that screw that light into the actual driver. Once all those are installed, you can now wire this for power. Now, what I did for my shop is I had 6 lights that were already on a switch for the house. So I took the closest light to the first light in my line and ran a cable from that to the wiring on the existing light. I removed the existing light and wired that line into the existing line. So what this did for me is that now, every time I flip that switch, it's operating the previous lights, but they're wired to my new lights. For the other 5, I simply removed the bulbs and left everything in place. Then once I had everything wired, it was time to go ahead and turn that breaker back on, flip on the light, and see what the result was. I mean, in all honesty, I don't really need to say much else about these lights. The proof is there. You're visually seeing it. There's no modifications to the camera. It is just the settings, the filming, and actually filming this video kind of sucked because the lighting was so bad while I was filming it because I was using the lights that were in the shop. Well, now, as you can see, that's obviously not the case anymore. Now, to close this video out, I want to talk about the price of these lights. To be clear, this is a sponsored video. And American Greenlights did provide me with these lights for this shop. They were a sponsor of my new shop, and they were also a sponsor of my previous shop. However, before this video, I actually took a look at the current pricing of these lights, which you can find on AmericanGreenlights.com. And currently they're actually running a sale. And each one of these lights, the 48 watt, are currently $99 a piece. Now, Jim over at American Greenlights was nice enough to give me a discount code to give you guys. So if you want to save 10% on your order with American Greenlights, just put in the code JasonBent. And I'll put all of that information down in the notes below. That is not an affiliate deal. I don't get any kind of kickback from that. It is simply a 10% discount for you. So I've been using these lights for almost 3 years now. I will not put a different light in my shop. I have no reason to. They do everything I need it to do. They've made my time in the shop much more enjoyable. They've made shooting video for you guys much more enjoyable. And they've also done a great job of showing me all the mistakes that I make on my projects because I'm able to see them a lot clearer. That is going to do it for this video. If you have any questions at all, please leave them down in the comment section below. Send me a DM, send me an email, whatever you need to do. I'd be happy to answer them. I will leave a link to American Greenlights down in the video description, as well as that other install video that I did if you want something a little bit more detailed. So until next time, everybody, get out in the shop, try something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.